problems with continuing this dialogue, Yaz. I noticed, by the way, we're also wearing the same shirt. Do we
I
do we
saw
have the
that.
same shirt, Merke? Are we at that stage of age, Yaz, where literally the only thing we've got is a blue and white shirt, and that's it?
You know, my wife has just gone upstairs. You saw her, and she's going to come to the bed and see all the different things I laid out before I decided just blue shirt, just blue shirt.
Exactly. Stop thinking you've got any sartorial sense. I think
I
I've
just know
already
two
hit
things.
that
I
point.
know don't wear all white because of glare, and I know don't wear stripes because it comes out fuzzy. So I just end up with a blue shirt anyway.
Yeah. I've been roundly criticized for my wear of late, and I've realized, yeah, maybe I should stop wearing those jeans. It's like I'm not 25 anymore, so I need a complete like. Oh, I need a stylist. That's what I need. Okay, folks, if you are a stylist and you operate in the recruitment space, let us know because Yaz and I we're going to be customers for you. That is right. We're going to pay some money, get a makeover. Okay, welcome everybody to Brainfood Live on Air. We're bringing it to you every Friday, no fail. And today we've got a super important conversation to have because it is really important for us in recruitment to kind of sometimes have a look at the kind of wider societal impact on artificial intelligence. We care about its impact on jobs. We care about its impact on us. But is the impact really as significant as chopping down an entire career trajectory that was previously the recommended path that people take? Back when we were at uni, Yaz, the idea was, hey, go to a good university, get a good grade, apply to a graduate scheme, and then your life is set. Middle class life. There you go. That is the path. Now, is that still viable in 2025? That is the conversation today, particularly for these blue chip brands that have historically been the most popular employers for those graduates. You know who they are. The big banks, the big PS companies, those kinds of companies previously hoovered up all the elite talent. What does it mean if actually the career ladder is actually being chopped down for those companies when where they're going to get the future leaders from? So that is the topic of today's show. But let me firstly check on sound, make sure everyone can hear me okay. So folks, if you're watching this on Crowdcast, let me know if the audio and visual is okay. You should see me and Yaz wearing the same shirt, getting the same sun. If that's the case, let me know whether the audio is fine. If you are watching this on Crowdcast, sort of LinkedIn, should I say, let me know if the audio visual is fine. Drop me a comment in the comment thread. Let me know. Okay, good stuff. It looks like people can hear us. That's all good. Yaz Dalal, probably people should know you're already in industry, but the folks who don't, why don't you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you and what is it you do, Yaz?
First of all, Hung, I'm happy to be here. And for all of my American friends back home in the US who think that the UK is a rainy island, this is natural sunshine. It's not a ring light. I think, Hung, you have the same because you're not a million miles away from where I'm recording this today. But I'm really happy to be here. Thanks for having me. My name is Yaz, and I'm with Jovio. And I've been with Jovio for the past couple of years. I'm the head of sales and chief growth officer here. Been in talent acquisition, though, from a services perspective, I don't know, 30 years, almost 28 years. Enough that all my hair is falling out. I was a partner at Accenture for a long time, or a couple of years rather, leading an HR technology practice there. I was at a recruitment marketing agency before that, and had the pleasure of working and delivering TA and recruiting services really around the world. Lived in Singapore for a while. I'm originally from New York and Boston, and I live in sunny England. So really happy to be here. Really happy also to talk about Jovio. And for those folks who aren't familiar with Jovio, we are an AI-led, of course it's an AI, although we are AI native, Hung, because we're only a 7-year-old company. So we are dyed in the wool. We're a high-performance recruitment marketing platform. And what does that mean? It means that we help really amazing, large companies, high volume hiring employers, staffing agencies like Uber, like Wells Fargo, like Adecco, lots of others. We help them supercharge their talent attraction, drive huge hiring outcomes through maximizing conversion and ROI. Almost a third of all Uber drivers in the world are hired through our platform. So we're really, really good at high volume recruiting with really high precision. Um, one of our RPO clients has even said that working with Jovio is a dream. So we feel a little validated that we're doing the right things. And of course, working with companies like Uber means that our tech has to be top notch. So we're very proud of that. Jovio is kind of a contraction word. This is a stretch. It originally comes from a job for everyone. Jovio. I think it's a little bit of a reach. I didn't make it up, but that is really our ethos. That we have a philosophy that there is the right job for each person that's out there, and the right person for each job. And so our promise is that we will make that connection and we make it fast and easy for employers and for candidates. And we do that by using data and AI to make that connection at the right time, in the right place, and of course, for employers at the right price. And what does it mean to make it easy? I mean, I know we're going to talk a lot about this today, but I was talking to my team about this earlier this week. When I use ChatGPT, I call it ChatGPT. I like to think that I've got an Indian analyst named ChatGPT, but it's ChatGPT. When I'm using ChatGPT or any of my other LLMs, I feel like I'm cheating. And the reason I feel like I'm cheating is I almost don't want to admit to my colleagues, like, hey, half of this I wrote or started or structured using an LLM. But we should feel proud about that. Like, we don't feel like it's cheating when we, buy sliced bread. That was technology from 120 years ago. That was the hottest thing. But if those things have become easier, then everything that's related to them should become easy. And that's what I mean when I say we make it easier for candidates to apply for the right jobs. It means using AI to build and deploy high converting landing pages, personalized career sites that convert more visitors into applicants. It means making it easier to retarget and engage candidates in our clients' existing talent pools so that they don't have to go and spend money every single time they want to find people, especially in large scale. And it means making it easier to personalize interactions across different channels, much in the same way that consumer advertising works today. So that's really what Jovio is all about. We're in the business of solving these problems for our clients, doing it better than anybody else, eliminating the hassle of, all the coordination around different job sites, social media, search engines, offline channels, candidate engagement. We bring all of that together for our clients, and we've been having a great run these past 6 or 7 years. It's very exciting. We're working with hundreds of major employers around the world, and we're essentially acting as their AI innovation engine because, almost 70% of our employees are engineers. I mean, I'm on the commercial side. The commercial team is like really small. The majority of people here are engineers. The pace at which they're delivering new innovation is so high that for a lot of our clients, the heads of TA look really good because they are one of the fastest innovating groups within their company, because all of our innovation accrues to them. They can claim it as their own because we're simply an extension of their team. So this is really what Jovio is all about. And we're super excited about it. We're super excited about the future, and I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you very much, Yaz. You've actually educated me a great deal here, and especially about maybe a way to kind of analyze vendors, like, well, what is the job distribution within the vendor you're speaking to? If it's like 95% sales, it's like, maybe you're getting sold hard to, bro. But if it's like heavy engineering, then yeah, you can expect the innovation rate to be quite high. In which case, it doesn't surprise me now that I hear it that all of the extensions of the jovial kind of value prop that you've outlined is based basically on the innovation capacity that you have internally. So very, very interesting indeed. And by the way, folks, as we go forward to this future, it is very clear that the ways in which we can get maximum benefit from artificial intelligence is typically using like an integrated sort of solution. The disparate tools that we're using, I think, yes, they make sense back in the day. But the true value of all of those tools is, can they interoperate? Can they share the intelligence between those tools? That's where you're going to kind of convert silver to gold, so to say. So yeah, it's a very exciting future. I think all of these technology companies that I'm fortunate to be working with in Brainfood, they all seem to be marching in this great direction together. So great that Jovio is one of those. Jovio.com, folks, if you need to know more and obviously connect with Yaz, I've just shared his link in LinkedIn into the chat stream there, and do connect with him and chat directly. Let's get on with the conversation here, Yaz, because there's also a reason why we wanted to bring Jovio in this conversation. And it was because we thought, okay, a company like Jovio that does a huge amount of programmatic advertising, does a lot of sort of ad management on behalf of these high volume employers. Maybe you guys will have a bit of an opinion with regards to what is the job posting volume, let's say, overall, but also within that sort of early entry segment. Like, do you have any visibility of that for us? I wonder what your thoughts are on that. Yeah, it doesn't have to be forensic, but just as a general sense, what are you seeing from the customer base on ad volume at the graduate level?
So I'll share a few things with you. For sure, even in the mainstream media, these are now headlines. We also see in the US labor market in the last couple of jobs reports evidence of this, evidence of what already startling changes in the number of graduate hires being made by, as you said earlier, usual suspects, big banking, big consulting, big accounting, companies in manufacturing or FMCG, CPG that traditionally hire from top 50 universities, looking for these high potential young people. Those job volumes are dropping. And at the same time, in parallel, you have companies like McKinsey, like Accenture, and some other major consulting firms proudly announcing that they have automated significant parts of what was traditionally a first-year analyst's job, creating decks, aggregating content, matching styles, looking up and pasting logos and making sure that they're centered, right? I don't want to downplay some of these tasks, but these were tasks that were traditionally done by first-year analysts who could be trusted to make intelligent decisions. But now the machine is able to do that and do it at speed. So there's already this evidence in the mainstream media. What we're seeing in our own data, a couple of things that I think might be interesting for our audience. The word AI, or associated terms, LLM or machine learning, appeared in over 3% of all the job postings and descriptions that we power across the US. Globally, a little bit lower, 2.7%, but still a huge increase over last year. It's a 40% increase. In other words, it's now a requirement. Now, what does that mean in terms of a requirement? First of all, within AI, Gen AI, generative AI, as a term or associated terms, LLMs, appear in about 5 out of every 1,000 job postings. So generically AI at 3%, but maybe Gen AI at a much smaller percentage. The second thing we're seeing is new job titles: AI model trainer, LLM trainer. I used to make the joke a few years ago, you talked about the middle class expectation of university to career path. I'm the son of Indian immigrants who came to the United States. My father's an engineer. My brother's a doctor and my sister's a PhD. The expectation on me is very high, right? And I'm the eldest. I studied English literature and French literature. The concept that I could do something with that was foreign to my parents. And the idea, I used to tell my dad this joke 5 years ago, there are roles today that didn't exist when you were working, social media manager. So now we've come to another level where AI model trainer, LLM trainer, prompt engineer are becoming more popular. So that's the second observation. And maybe the third and last one I have is that we're seeing AI keywords being used in roles across multiple industries, not just technology, but also in functions like data science, machine learning, software development. That's usual suspects. But then consulting, first-year management analyst, investment banking, strategy roles, roles that require long-term thinking. And then also within bioscience, because from a research perspective, that capability becomes really important. So if I give you one more example within consulting, on that note, management consulting roles on Indeed now account for over 12% of all Gen AI job postings. So a huge growing focus, like I mentioned earlier, on AI implementation in the consulting industry.
Very interesting. Yas, thank you so much for that overview. And we've got some great comments, by the way. Steve, Sophie, thank you so much for joining that conversation. I think very relevant. I think this sort of observation that Steve has mentioned probably worth underlining in the sense that pre-AI, there was a movement actually to expand the top of funnel to try and remove the degree as the a kind of a barrier to entry. This is the skills-based hiring, which basically was a conversation pre-AI, by the way, and it was pre-COVID, as a matter of fact. So it could be a lot of sort of our analyses is skewed in the sense if we're still looking at degree requirement, we might see a drop, a commensurate actually with the removal of that requirement from employers rather than the volume of early entry. So I think that's worth exploring. I do believe Sophie's coming on later. Sophie, we'll bring you on. We can talk about this in a bit more detail. But I think just intuitively, I think you might be right, Yaz, in the sense that so many graduate schemes early on, the kind of like the job task is generally being like the office gopher, isn't it? It's like being the sort of the junior attendant to a partner or someone else who's like the more senior consultant. And yes, you are the person doing the online research. You are the person pulling together a slide deck. You are the person basically doing a bibliography type role, trying to pull together all that stuff. Actually, guess what? This is the base use case of what a large language model can do. So even if you are still doing it, this large language model can do it with you significantly more efficiently. So there's going to need less of you to do that. So I do think that maybe that 1 to 2 year apprenticeship that we kind of had given to graduates certainly needs to be reworked, because if we kind of were justifying it on the fact of, oh, you know what, this person's really going to help the senior consultant get more efficient. Actually, the senior consultant can use ChatGPT for that, or perhaps a proprietary LLM or something else that they can put together.
It has to become a requirement, and it has to become a requirement at the job level. If I again refer back to my father, who started working in 1968, when he stopped working in his late 70s, he was an expert in AutoCAD. AutoCAD is quote unquote new. It's from the 80s. So the first 15 years of his career, he's hand drafting designs, but in the latter 30 years, he's doing it through computer software. So as long as it's a requirement of the job, the training then gets shared not only by the preparatory experience in university and coming out of university, but really sits squarely with the employer, that if you expect everybody to migrate their skills upward towards the technology, you've got to make it a requirement and provide channels for learning it on the job, because we have 5 generations in the workforce. Everyone's going to have to pick this up. It's not just the fresh grads.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Let's bring on Marketa here. She is actually in one of these consultancies, and in fact, probably is wrestling with these challenges right now as we speak. James, Sophie, we're going to bring you on in a moment, but I want to hear from Marketa first and get her view. Marketa, you should get a pop-up saying "come on screen." Just accept that. And we should be good to go. Yes, it's very interesting. I think I, like every other graduate, applied. I applied to KPMG, Marketa. You said no.
You did?
Yeah, well, everyone else said no, so you're in good company.
Did you get a job?
No, everyone rejected me. Yeah, all of them did, and they were correct to do so. I now realize. But no, wonderful to see you, Marketa. I know it's kind of getting late in the day for you as well, so I do appreciate you taking the time. Can you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you? What it is you do?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Hello from Dubai, actually. So for us, it's already almost evening here. So I have just a couple more calls to make and I'm done for the weekend. Yeah, I'm a partner at KPMG. I've been with KPMG for 14 years and made my way up through the ranks. the career that you mentioned. And I'm currently the head of people, performance, and culture for KPMG Middle East. So covering countries like the UAE, KSA, Oman, Jordan, Lebanon, and looking after our about 5,500 colleagues in these countries.
Fantastic. Marketa, having heard what Yaz and I were speculating about okay, this kind of stereotypical view of what a young entry person into a management consultancy service would be, that the 1 to 2 year period rotating around, you're kind of doing a lot of that, a gopher type work, I called it. Do you think that's a fair characterization? And if so, are we seeing the trend that actually management consultancies are hiring less people because AI can do a lot of this stuff now?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fair what you said. Typically our analysts, they would do research, benchmarking. They would sit in the meetings, take minutes of the meetings. They would do some simple report writing, simple analysis, and that's how they learn. It's not to underestimate these tasks. Because they do it, they get guidance, they get feedback, and that's how they learn, and that's how they eventually grow. Because if they didn't go through this stage, how would they become managers, and how would they know how to eventually guide their teams, do critical review of the deliverables, and produce things that deliver value to our clients. So traditionally these are the tasks that they used to do. And to be fair, if you dissect it, I would say good 20 to maybe 40% of these things can actually be done by AI. The only thing I would caution is that it's actually really important not to just rely on AI, but let's say, if you do your research or your benchmarking using tools like, we have a proprietary tool called AIQ, but it's similar to ChatGPT. But sometimes what happens is that the information is not fully reliable, so it's important that the analyst then goes and verifies everything that was collected, that they get links to the origin where the information came from, and they really need to verify it. If they get to the AI to do any analysis, again, they need to review it critically, because the state at which the AI is at the moment, it's not 100% reliable. And we just cannot afford to deliver something that wouldn't be 100% good quality deliverable. So the skill set needs to slightly change. They need to become, they need to start thinking more critically, and they need to contextualize whatever the AI produces to the context of the client. So it's well and good that maybe the benchmark say one thing, but will it actually work for my client? Because maybe it wouldn't work for their culture, or maybe it wouldn't work in their particular setting, or for whatever reason. So they really need to look at it from this angle, so the job changes slightly.
Yeah, really interesting. You mentioned so many interesting points. Maybe the most important one, Marketa, as far as I hear it, was this idea that there's actually a dual purpose to a lot of that go for work. I mean, I kind of made a joke, but actually, it's not just the production of the slide deck that's important. It's just the learning by doing. It's the osmotic information transfer. Yes, you're making notes, but it's not just note writing. You're also listening. You're observing how the consultant is interacting with the customer. All of that stuff is like just a deep institutional kind of knowledge that makes the difference between KPMG and a competitor or whatever it might be. So that creates a really interesting challenge for us, though, doesn't it? Because if a lot of the things that maybe the real value of the work is not the work, so to say, the real value is it's a training for what this person is going to be adding value a year, 2 years down the line. But we're not quantifying that knowledge transfer. Like, we're quantifying the minute production. We're measuring that. We're measuring the quality of the slide deck, and is it done in time? And that kind of stuff. So how do we make sure the knowledge transfer still works, even when, say, AI can do it better? And can we do we create that sort of a career track where we say, okay, the purpose of this is actually training? We literally label it as training rather than say, this is report research or whatnot. Am I making myself clear here? Maybe I'm confusing matters a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, look, the way I look at it is now when we recruit our juniors, actually the skill set that they come with, they are actually much more open to these new tools. So, many a times I'm actually learning from them, some of the tricks they know and that they are using on, Copilot or ChatGPT. I didn't know those functionalities and they know it. So we kind of learn from each other. They maybe learn the tricks of the trade from us and we learn how to be tech savvy from them. And maybe because these tools make them faster and more productive, maybe we will recruit fewer. But by no means it would mean that we wouldn't recruit any juniors. I would say maybe this might impact 10, 15, 20%, but still you will have a bulk that we still need to recruit. And as you say, they will be doing these tasks, kind of being augmented by the AI. And as they do it, they learn all those other skills by observing their seniors and getting feedback. And then what I assume is that eventually our pyramid will change slightly, where at the moment it's very wide at the base and then it kind of become narrow as you go up. So it's kind of a pyramid triangle. But maybe in the future it will be kind of more like a rectangle, fewer juniors, but more of the managers that actually really need to do the quality review and assurance, and more of the senior people who actually hold the relationship with the client, who can actually then go and make sure that there's a buy-in for the deliverable so that the client can, have the comfort that whatever we do actually fits their context, it helps them, it will deliver value, and they can take it and implement it.
Marketa, I have a question. Do you think that there's a risk to slowing the adoption of internal or institutional knowledge? And what I mean is, there's the old cliche of people starting in the mailroom and making it to CEO, because the mailroom is where you can observe all the correspondence, you are delivering to all the positions in the company, you get a sense of the company physically through your interaction. By automating some of the entry-level things that are important to help you understand the whole context of the business, do we risk losing, or have you and your colleagues thought about, is there a risk to losing some of that institutional knowledge transfer for a young first or second year person because some of those tasks that gave them that knowledge transfer are now being substituted in by automation?
Yeah, I mean, the time will tell. It could happen, because they won't really understand the process, the nitty-gritty of how things actually come together, and maybe they will just see it done by AI, but maybe they won't understand the process behind it. So we just need to be careful about it and make sure that they understand as well, because you can't really review something critically and understand does it make sense or not if you don't know how it came all together. I mean, one thing that I'm just thinking that also probably in the future we might be taking more people directly from the industry as lateral hires rather than growing through the ranks, because typically what happens is that when we hire from the junior level, people spend the first 2-3 years actually learning the consulting skills. So, putting together PowerPoints, using Excel to do analysis, doing research and so on. And more of those tasks can be done by AI. But then in the future, we might be able to take more people directly from the industry because they understand actually what is it that the client needs. They understand exactly those particular skills or the particular area that we are delivering for. And they would be able to do this critical review and contextualizing to the client environment.
There's two kind of phrases I'm going to throw in here because I think they're really useful concepts. I didn't come up with them. That's why they're useful, actually. First one is intentional inefficiency. So this is something that John Vlastelica mentioned, and he's in the recruiting space with us. One of the great thinker-doers in our industry. If you don't know John Vlastelica, by the way, go follow him, folks. But he mentioned this. I thought, wow, that's really interesting. What does he mean by this? And he said, look, when you're trying to kind of do an intake meeting with a client, you can't just like take the first thing he or she gives you. You've got to listen. You've got to read between the lines. Like, what is this person really looking for? The things maybe you can't say, or maybe things you can't even document. What is the true history behind this role? Because if you as a recruiter don't know that additional context, you're going to waste a lot of time, and this person is not going to hire the people you put forward because you're missing that context. And he's saying, look, the only way you can get there is actually building trust, and building trust requires intentional inefficiency. Like, how do you get trust otherwise? Right? You're spending basically unscheduled time in order to generate trust. So I think that's a concept we've got to think about, bringing it in there. However, there's another concept, which again, I didn't come up with, but I forget the name of the person who did. And it's a concept called embedded imperative. And the embedded imperative basically means something which is beyond the local decision of a manager or a CEO. It's simply the DNA of a particular business. And the embedded imperative of a business is revenue maximization. Which kind of means it's going to clash with intentional inefficiency, because revenue maximization is the job of every leader and every who holds a P&L, right? You're there to make those numbers look better. That's your job. That's an embedded imperative. You can't decide suddenly, decide that is not my job. I actually prefer this. You're going to get fired. Right. So you're going to do that. You're going to execute on what that embedded imperative is. But that's going to smack headlong into intentional inefficiency, isn't it? How do we balance those two things? Any thoughts on this?
Oh, goodness.
I'm laughing because I told you before that I did study English, and the original term embedded imperative is like, I'm going to make this a passive aggressive thing. If my wife said, my husband told me don't walk through the living room from 2 to 3, but I did it anyway. Don't walk through the living room is the embedded imperative in that sentence. That's where that comes from. So I'm just laughing as you said it because it's an English lit term. But I wonder what you think, Marketa. I think it's fascinating, both of these terms that you're sharing with us.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's just the way of life, right? So that's how it is, and you need to get on with it. The embedded imperative, yeah, I mean, for sure, that's ultimately what companies here are for, right? Maximize your revenue profit. I think nowadays I'm seeing much more focus on other things like the purpose as well, right? And actually, when we recruit the young generation, they ask about it as well. They actually intentionally choose companies that are not just about generating profit and revenues, but companies that also do good things for the society, good things for the community, for their employees. So that's important as well.
It also leads on in terms of our future attractiveness as employers to those really talented people that we really want to select for. We can imagine that the old golfer style career path that I've kind of defended a little bit may not be attractive actually to the next generation coming forward, because they want to use all these tools, they want to get involved in all of this. And James just commented there, I'll bring him on. He's the representative of the young generation, by the way. James, I hope you know that. Also what are the alternative career paths that we're going to compete against? And by the way, Marketa, I do love the concept of potentially bridging beyond this kind of, we have to recruit from university graduates at these colleges, that's the only thing. Actually, AI may make a different playing field, because suddenly we can attract different types of people to enter into consultancy services. Perhaps industry domain knowledge becomes a little bit more important than academic criteria, let's say. So all of this super fascinating. But okay, let's bring on, tell you what, I'm going to bring on Sophie first. James, I want to bring you on in a sec. Don't get you, everyone's going to come on screen, but I want Sophie's analysis on some of these reports that have come on that have really stimulated this conversation into the mainstream. So as a bit of context, the reason why some of this stuff has burst into the mainstream is probably through one particular report. I think it was by Yale. It's called Canaries in the Gold Mine. And essentially, it drew from ADP data, which is a payroll software. And it basically was able to make claims to say, actually, we can tell by the payroll that there is a decline in a certain age cohort because people are simply not getting jobs in that age range. So, Sophie, great to see you on screen. Thanks for joining us. Sophie, for the people who don't know you, can you quickly introduce yourself, who are you, what it is you do?
Absolutely. So first of all, I just want to say thanks so much for having me. I am a longtime listener and reader of the newsletter. So a bit about me. I'm Sophie Jablansky. I'm a senior project manager at Various Insights. My background is actually in psychology. So I got my PhD in educational psychology and I have a master's in statistics. But I've spent the last 4 years working as a researcher at Various Insights. For those who aren't familiar with Various Insights, we are a research and intelligence firm for recruiting. What that means is we work with more than 280, I believe, university recruiting and talent acquisition leaders, giving them data and insights to figure out things like where to find the right talent, how to connect with them, and how to hire more effectively. But a big focus for us right now, and especially in my work, is AI. Not just how it's changing the kind of talent that companies need, but how candidates themselves are using AI, sometimes in fraudulent ways, and how TA teams are even rethinking their structures to get the most out of AI. So really interested in just jumping into this topic.
No, fantastic to join us, Sophie. And the reason why kind of we brought you into this conversation is actually a great blog post you wrote to sort of breaking down sort of these different reports that came out. I just threw all of those reports into Notebook LLM, by the way, and just listened to it all. And it was really interesting to just compare, because a lot of those reports initially seem to have contradictory messages, but in fact, it may all kind of just be looking at a same problem from a slightly different angle, a complex problem from a different angle. So, Sophie, I wonder whether you could just take us through your thought process on these reports and what you think is actually going on within that graduate recruitment space.
Yeah, and this is kind of the million-dollar question, because if you look at the news, there's no shortage of articles saying that AI is coming for early career jobs. I'm sure we've all seen the articles by CEOs claiming that, white collar entry career roles are going to be wiped out in the next couple of years. But what was interesting was that when I was speaking with heads of TA, heads of university recruiting, some were pulling back, but in a lot of cases, we heard that their programs were steady state or that they're actively investing in early career hiring. So I decided to kind of take to the academic space. And I found 3 articles that I felt were methodologically rigorous, but actually landed in really different places on this question. And I felt that they could kind of act as proxies for the different perspectives out there. So one of the studies was the paper you mentioned. It's actually out of Stanford, I believe, Canaries in the Coal Mine. And then I also looked at a report from Burning Glass Institute and then Employ America. And I think you're right that they approach their analyses from very different altitudes, sometimes looking economy-wide, sometimes at industries, but then also, like the Stanford paper, at the individual level. And so while a lot of their conclusions seem to conflict on their face, when you dug into it, you could kind of actually get this much more nuanced picture of what's going on. And so the conclusion that I ultimately reached from going through these is, yes, AI does seem to be having a negative impact on early career roles, but only under 3 very specific conditions. And so those conditions are: the occupation has to be extremely AI exposed. And what I mean by that is it would be possible for AI to do that job better and faster. The second thing is that AI would have to be used to automate as opposed to augment tasks. And the third is that the tasks that are left over after that automation require a level of expertise that a lot of new grads just don't have yet. So the kind of TLDR I came to is, yes, AI is displacing some early career roles, but the actual effect is fairly small and localized. It's hardly at the intensity that the headlines would have you believe.
Really interesting, Sophie. I've just shared Sophie's analysis in the link there. Do go read that. I think it's just worth the balancing, because we also need to bear in mind that, headline writers are there to get clicks. And, when you add complexity and say, oh, it's actually more complicated, caveats don't get clicks. You need to have definitive overconfidence in order to get people to click through, which is part of the problem, because it kind of just generates more sensationalism. But it is a deeply nuanced situation. But let's unpack those three reasons, Sophie, because I think they're fascinating. Number one, it is where it's occupation related. So certain jobs where AI is heavily sort of exposed. I'm assuming this would be, I don't know, classically translating languages, let's say, or, maybe it's customer service, perhaps, if it's online sort of, chat related customer service. Maybe it is, there's probably a lot of like recruitment type jobs at early entry. Let's face facts. When I was first a recruiter, I was looking at CVs, man. The first part of my sort of entry into the job was, okay, Hung, we can't have you speak to clients. You're going to embarrass us. Why don't you just go through these CVs and pick out the top 10 out of these 500? And guess what? That's probably AI exposed today. So yes, is that what we mean, Sophie?
Definitely. Yeah. And what's interesting is the way that they measure AI exposure a lot of times actually comes down to taking occupational tasks from ONET and having human raters rate how well could AI do this job. So that's just a methodological aside that I think is interesting. But when we talk about the types of roles this is impacting, it's actually a pretty broad spectrum. Like, definitely we have jobs like customer service roles where there's a lot of rote, repetitive tasks going on. But we also see this happening in a lot of marketing roles, which is a little bit interesting. And then if you go up even further, there are definitely tasks within the financial analyst space, for example, that are being heavily automated now, or at least have the potential to be.
Yeah, that's right. Customer service gets a bad rap because of the relatively low status of it. But you're absolutely right. A lot of financial roles, a lot of marketing, very heavily exposed. I think marketing as a function probably uses more AI than any other function right now. Therefore, AI exposed. So super, super interesting here. Okay, anybody, Yaz and Marketa, what are your thoughts on that initial point? That AI's impact is actually disproportionately towards certain occupations. Do you think that's true? And do you think sometimes it can be defended? Because I'm thinking of the legal sector here. That's got to be number one in terms of exposure, because you're just reading text, right? But that's defended by the industry, because the industry is going to realize, oh, you know what, we're going to need these juniors because they're future partners for us. That's future money. We're not going to just say, AI is going to do that, because we need that future pipeline in order for us to expand our business. So I think certain professions might defend themselves better, shall we say, whereas marketing, I think, wouldn't have that sense of class consciousness, let's say, or occupational consciousness. What are your thoughts, Marketa?
Yeah, I mean, I really like the point when Dr. Sophie said that the jobs that are just augmented by AI perhaps won't be as much impacted. And I really see it. And what I feel is that a lot of the entry-level roles that we have are more augmented than completely replaced. But, when it comes to then agentic AI that can really take over, almost the whole role or almost the whole process, that's when you will actually see significant reduction of the workforce. And yeah, I mean, the examples you gave, yeah, I can understand it. If I look at our marketing department, a lot of the work is, writing thought leadership, where definitely we still need to do the piece of doing the research and writing the meat of the report, meat of the thought leadership. But the source around it, the whole report of 20 pages can be written by AI, but maybe the core of it that actually conveys the analysis and the insights, that still needs to be written by a human. But then as a consequence, I could understand that we could have fewer people in marketing. We don't really have customer service in professional services, but again, I can see that that's the type of roles that could be heavily automated. I think in our profession, probably one area that could be quite impacted is audit, because in audit, it's all about analysis of large sets of data, and actually, if you do it manually, then you need to rely on your tests and samples. But then, if you use AI, you can actually review, the whole data set, and you can have much better accuracy. So I think the only thing that's slowing us down at the moment is kind of the regulatory requirement, and that perhaps in the region where I'm based, the data cannot be put into cloud because of the data security. But in the future, once we actually sort out this problem, audit I can see as one profession that can be heavily automated.
One thing I would add to, and Marquette, I'd be curious on your view of this, is I think sometimes we talk about AI exposure and automation as though it's this deterministic process, that it's this eventuality, that because there is potential for AI to do some of these tasks or occupations, it means that that will happen and those people's careers will be displaced. One of the things I thought about a lot as I was writing my article was I think companies have a choice. They have a choice about whether they want to automate certain tasks within those occupations or whether they want to arm their workers with the tools to augment them and do work better and faster. So I think a lot of it comes down to what's the philosophy of the company about the value of their talent, where they want their talent to come from, how they want to grow them, but then also a more practical, can they afford to have that long-term view of talent?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Go ahead, McKenna. Go ahead.
Yeah, what I was going to say, I think maybe initially it can be up to the choice of the company, but then I believe that long term, the market will pressure them to move certain way, because if they are less efficient, if other companies can do things faster, cheaper, better perhaps, then regardless if I want to keep people doing that task, or if I want to have it automated or done by AI, I'll just be forced certain way just to stay competitive. So I think the market forces will ultimately have to say.
I completely agree.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Yes, go ahead. Sorry, no.
No, I was going to say I completely agree, Marquetta, in terms of market forces, or if you're in a society that's not market driven, in a more autocratic society, I completely support the point that it feels deterministic because there's an anonymous they that are determining the extent to which this is infiltrating work and life. But the they is actually, it's employers, it's government. If we're in a Western, capitalist society, it's the market forces that are going to demand that because they want to pay less for services. And so we have to seek efficiency through automation. If it's in an autocratic society, it's because they want to grab the future faster. But I don't think it's deterministic in and of itself. It's going to be driven by human intervention, decision-making, policy, unpredictable things like pandemics that force us into a norm that maybe we wouldn't have entered into for another few years, but for that, natural intervention.
Yeah, this is super interesting, folks. And the intervention I was about to make was to say that the binary choices that we seem to have may not be as binary as we think, because it's generally more along the lines of a spectrum, isn't it? In the sense that, how much, for instance, do you automate versus how there's a degree of this. It's not just a case of insta 100% automation. There's going to be kind of a warp and weft to all of this. In addition, on the market forces side, I just wonder, when does that market force actually kick in? Because it could be certain businesses might be able to hang on in there in order to train up their staff. Let's say they go down the human first route and think, right, we're going to grit our teeth, we're going to get these young people trained up, and then we're going to get the payoff in 18 months, 24 months down the line, when we have AI-enabled human quality candidates against these other people who have just automated everything away and lost their human capacity. We think we're going to win in 2 years time down the line, rather than immediately. So this comes down to almost your strategic endurance as well. So your vision as a business, let's say how long a runway you've got, and also what your long-term plan is. Like if you're just like doing quarter by quarter, I guess, yes, you're going to automate away and off you go. All the humans are going to be automated out. But if you're a leader of a business that really is in for the long game, you've got to have a much longer time horizon and think, even into the decades, which is maybe where a few of us have actually got to. But anyways, the strategic endurance part is an important aspect. Folks, we're going to crack on through. This is a super interesting note. Before I bring James on, I do need to go through the other points you mentioned, Sophie. So you talked about AI exposure, and we kind of edged into this concept of augmenting versus automation. Now, again, these are a little bit fuzzy, aren't they? What do you mean by this? I mean, I guess, do we mean that the augmentative basically means the human is still doing the thing, they're just doing it with more capability, whereas automation means the human ain't doing the work. It's simply gone from that job.
I think that's a fair way of thinking about it. Automative essentially means substitutive. So you are taking the human out of the equation, whereas with augmentation, you are basically arming a human with the tools to do that task better and faster.
Yeah. Fantastic stuff. I think that more or less gets us to the final point that it was in your analysis, which was the remaining stuff. So once you've automated away some percentage of the job, what the remaining percent, what degree of expertise or domain knowledge is required to do that? If that domain knowledge is high, then actually know that there's going to be less unemployment. You still need that human being to do it. But actually, if it is not high, then in fact, that's where we see and observe a drop in employment. Is that an accurate characterization of that point, Sophie?
Yeah, and this actually comes from a paper by, I believe, Otter and Thompson out of MIT, and they found this really interesting effect of expertise as it relates to what we're automating. So just as you said, Hung, if you are automating the sort of lower level tasks with AI, what you have left over are much more difficult tasks that often involve tacit knowledge that is gained through on-the-job experience over several years. A lot of new grads aren't going to have that advantage coming in, whereas if you are automating more of those expert level tasks, what you have left over are more of the simple tasks, which actually inflates your talent pool, but interestingly depresses wages a little bit. So I think it's really interesting to think about those trade-offs.
I've read that report. It's a really wonderful dystopia because there's no good option. I love it. It's like the de-skilling on one side, so we make the jobs dumb, and then everyone's equalized because they're actually just grinding away on these routine tasks, or we automate away the routine, and that actually creates a moat, a gerontocracy, because it means that the people who've sort of achieved the domain expertise pre-AI will have an insuperable moat against people that are coming into the world of work after AI, because they're never going to get the domain knowledge because it's inefficient for them to get that domain knowledge. Brings us back to our initial point, Marketa, doesn't it? All the way back to, the osmotic transfer. That's the real purpose. Like, we've got to get that conversation back in. Okay, Yaz, you're about to say.
Yes, I wanted to just pick up on one thing that Sophie said, because doesn't that mean, or are you suggesting that work will get harder? It's something that I've been testing as a message with my team and with other colleagues is, the facile example I use is the calculator, right? So again, when my father started working, he was using a slide rule, then there was calculators, then there was computers. I was the first class in my high school to have to use a scientific calculator. So that's how old I am. But if I look at my children's homework, it's harder because the calculator is expected. It's not a cheat. And so, and you're talking about if we automate some of the lower value or complexity tasks, then the work that remains is the harder work. What do you think are the implications for that? Does it mean that everyone needs to spend more time in the educational cycle to then adopt some of the skills that they need in order to do the harder work? Does it mean that fresh grads come into employment and spend the first 2 years doing only knowledge transfer so that moat is narrowed? What is your view?
I don't know, but I want to bring on James Hutt here because he's going to tell us. James, you're here as an avatar of the new generation, mate.
Flattered.
Why don't you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you? What it is you do?
Great, thanks, Hung. It's been a while since I was the representative of the youth, so really nice to be here. I run a little consultancy called Paradigm Junction. We work with companies, bits of government to help them respond to change when that change is caused by technology. And I guess for our favorite clients, we help them anticipate it too and get ahead of that. I'm laughing. Hung knows I just hired someone out of uni last summer, so I now have a 22-year-old who works for me. So I spend most of my days feeling very old rather than like the representative of youth. So nice to be here.
Great to see you here. And James, I've just shared his link also in the chat stream. Do make sure you connect with him. James, we had a really good conversation, and you've heard this chat so far, but your personal example, I want to just lean on a little bit, if you don't mind, because, you were a person that academically achieved very well. It looked like, okay, this person's going to go down that classic blue chip career track. And you decided, no, you didn't want to do it. So I wonder whether you could take us through your thought process and why you thought that was no longer, not necessarily the most optimal course, or how the optimal course has changed in your personal kind of perspective.
Yeah, of course. I guess something I don't often admit to live streams, but I'm a recovering investment banker. I came straight out of university, spent a few years at JP Morgan, and left as the work kind of didn't match the pattern that I'd been led to expect. And I think what I found is it was one of the areas that automation came for very quickly. The job that I was doing was radically different from the job that my seniors had been doing 10 years previously. They used to have a lot of intellectual work, working out what the right price of trading instruments should be. And by the time I got there were hugely developed systems that had been built by people much cleverer, with much more knowledge of the markets than me. And my job was to speak to clients, put those requirements in and turn the handle, run it. But that made the job not one of sort of intellectual struggle. It made it one of almost high pressure factory operations, putting in data entry and then dealing with it appropriately rather than doing the thinking myself. So I left after a few years. I thought that the job had actually been de-skilled by the introduction of automation. And I, over the course of the next few years, set up my own business. I'm now sort of happily running my own business. And if you look at labor stats in the US or in the UK, lots and lots of people are taking the same decision. People are choosing not to work in big organizations, and there have been far more companies created since the pandemic. So maybe an interesting challenge for employers, particularly blue chip employers, whether they're going to be getting the best people or whether those who have that drive that they were looking for will go do their own thing.
Really interesting, James. And Sophie, this actually speaks to the point about where the automation or the innovation is applied, because it looks like it was exactly applied to intellectually rigorous work. This mini example that James introduced, it actually reduced the job into, basically a young guy grinding, turning a handle and turning it faster because that's where the pressure was. And guess what? That's a de-skilled job. De-skilled jobs, they're demotivating, hard to keep yourself going with that. Out you go. So that's, I think it's an interesting mini sort of cameo there of what may be happening, maybe at wider scale. Any other thoughts on this, folks? How do employers reappeal to the likes of James Hutt? How do we stop him resigning from our businesses when we need to be efficient, right? Like this better. Plus, not only efficient, it's actually better. Let's face facts, James. The machine would actually calculate better, right, than a human being would. That's the reason why it has replaced those human beings. It's a better, objectively better. So I think it's impossible for us to make the decision not to use it, isn't it? Unless we want to turn into an artisanal business, I guess. Does that work in investment banking?
Yeah, it was certainly massively more productive. They were doing far more business with far fewer people. But I think what the conversation I was having with Bob in the chat, one of the things that feels like it needs to change is when people are getting the payback for that training they're doing. Because there's still this culture around, certainly when I was there, the idea that you're in a seat for 10 years, you learn over the course of those 10 years, and then you get to be someone who's senior, who does intellectually interesting work and gets really highly paid for it. But, particularly people who are coming out of college now, who are deciding what they want to do with work, you say, oh, in 10 years' time, you'll have this really nice, cushy job with good work and good pay. And they say, well, I'm not certain that job's going to exist in 10 years' time. We seem to be uncertain about how the world of work is going to be impacted. And so for me, the answer is about where you give people that value and they get to flex those muscles. Because if you say you've got to wait for it, then that's not as appealing a prospect as it is in a world where something's predictable and stable.
That's a really good point. I mean, again, that 10-year apprenticeship, it's a stereotype, isn't it, Marketa, of what professional services, of what the social contract is, isn't it? It's like 10 years to make partner, but it's going to be a grind. Like, you're going to be ground down. It's part of it. It's almost like a ritual punishment where you've got to do the hours, you've got to do the hard work, you've got to be in and out of airports. But when you get there, wow, that payoff is great, because your pay is high, your status is high, you're doing great work, but you have to earn your spurs. And then you become the taskmaster for the next generation because you went through it. So why shouldn't a young generation? But okay, what if the young generation says that payoff's not good enough? It's actually too high risk now because I may not ever get that payoff. What are your thoughts on that, from a business point of view, from an employer branding point of view?
Well, to begin with, you made it sound really bad, but it's actually consulting or professional services. For me, it's a really fun job because where else, every few months you get to have a different client with a completely different problem, different industry, deal with different characters and people, and interview them and get to know all about their business, and and analyze it, and help them solve their problems. I mean, it's hard, it's long working hours, but it's actually really, really fun, and you learn so much. So I feel like a lot of these jobs are going to be augmented, and maybe the boring part of like sitting for hours and hours and writing a report, that will be much faster. Or searching web for your data points and benchmarks is going to be faster as well. But the fun part of actually interacting with the people and understanding the things that you cannot just find somewhere, you need to actually speak to people and go and see their business to understand what's wrong. I think that will always still be there, and without it, your report or your deliverable can't be relevant. So I mean, the job is actually really fun, and I think we will still always manage to attract enough people. Like, I can give you an example. This year we got 23,000 applications for our graduate program, and we hired 500 people. So we still have a lot of choice, and I'm not seeing it going down just yet. And then another point to keep in mind is that, like, nowadays I feel like people are just uncertain about any type of job, and everybody's asking, will my job still be here in 10 years? Like, I have a 15-year-old daughter, and we are now at a point of choosing GCSEs and what university she will go to eventually, what she will study. And I, as a mother, I'm trying to crack, okay, what are the jobs that will still be here? And when she told me, oh, I want to be a graphic designer, I was like, no, it's not a good idea. And I pulled out ChatGPT and generated some images. So she was like, okay, maybe I'll not be a graphic designer. So I'm now trying to sway her towards different careers. So the problem is just, I feel we are at a point where the future is so uncertain that it's not just consulting won't be here. What about other jobs? The future will show.
Yeah, absolutely right, Marketa, and great defense of the professional services career path, by the way. And I think you're absolutely right in the sense that gives you the variety. It is actually quite different from banking, as a general case, because banks are like machine-like, and I just wonder whether, in particular, you're going to feel much more like a monkey grinder there than you do. You grind monkeys? You know what I mean? Than anywhere else. But the idea of young people, how do you coach a 15-year-old right now? I think everyone must be going through this challenge, Marketa. I do resonate with this. I guess one of the things is probably true is that we've got to train agility and resilience, don't we? Like, maybe we don't want to be overly committing kids at that age in this environment to this is your career path, because none of us can be certain what makes sense one way or the other. But we've got to train resilience, we've got to train mental agility, we've got to train quickness of sort of from idea to action, experimental mindset, all of those things. Let's leave that as the final sort of word of advice. What advice would you give to a young person thinking about career path right now? And what advice would you give to an employer thinking about hiring people right now with the tension between, profit and intentional inefficiency? Let's try and answer these two questions. James, we'll start with you. Why not? What's your advice to younger James? What's your advice to an employer potentially hiring that person?
So I guess my advice to people, school leaver age, a little older, is to show that you can learn things quickly. In a world where we can't predict what's coming up, being able to show that you're able to adapt to that and pick new skills up on your own without necessarily someone spoon feeding you, I think it's a really important thing to be able to show. For employers, I think I would be saying it's about how do you strike that bargain and show that things are changing as well. So if you can say to people that you're using some of that freed up time to help them train or give them responsibility earlier, I think that's a really appealing offer, particularly for the types of employees who are going to do well in that sort of changing world. And so, yeah, for employers, I'd say commit to training and tell people that that's the bargain you're making as well.
I love that. Have I seen any employers to date talk about converting efficiency gains from artificial intelligence into training and experience gains for human beings? I think make that connection, guys. I think you're talking about those two things as separate things and saying, we're going to train you, it turns into a cliche. But why don't you talk about, hey, we're going to be AI first. We're going to optimize this, and this. But guess what? Every 10% optimization, you get 5% back in human training. Has anyone even thought to make that message? I think it's very powerful for young people. I like hearing it. Okay, Sophie, your advice to younger people and also companies hiring younger people.
Sure. I think my advice to younger people would be, one, get comfortable with AI. That is a lot of the value that organizations are going to derive from your kind of talent right now. But also, I would say, going back to the literature on expertise, try and find ways of getting deeply immersed in the field that you're interested in, whether that is shadowing someone, internship, some sort of apprenticeship. But those expert level skills are going to come in real handy and also inflate wages when we think about the types of lower level tasks that AI might automate and give you an advantage over your peers who may not have that expertise built up. For employers, I would say recognize the value that this younger generation is going to bring, especially with their native skills in AI. I know a lot of the value proposition for young workers right now, what it typically was, for instance, injecting diversity into the workforce, offering a source of cost-effective talent. Some of those old value propositions may be falling, but the value proposition of having those AI skills and being able to propel a company in this new environment, I think offer a lot of value.
Yeah, fantastic. And by the way, one of the advantages of AI is that it should increase your skills acquisition, right? So you can become expert in shorter time frame. That is one of the values of AI. So if you're a young person thinking, oh, it's going to take me 10 years to learn this, no. It might have taken somebody 10 years ago, but today it might take you 12 months or less. Immersion can get you there. So especially with the tooling that you have, so you can get to that expert point a lot faster than perhaps you could before. That's no longer the constraint. It's no longer the years spent as the constraint. It's the commitment you put in. Really good advice, Sophie. Marketa, go to you. What's your advice to, I guess you're thinking about this, your advice to a 15, 16-year-old and also to a company hiring for younger people?
Yeah, so I mean, I really agree with Sophie that the job seekers, they need to really be tech savvy nowadays. That's like non-negotiable. Apart from the field of expertise that they choose, they absolutely need to be very close to AI and be tech savvy. And in terms of behavioral traits, they need to be very resilient, as you said, and flexible and open-minded. Because the future is just too uncertain right now. So they need to be ready to take different paths in the future and just keep learning all the time. So that would be for the young professionals and for the employers. I guess not to have knee-jerk reactions and just stop hiring young professionals. Really look at the entry-level jobs and analyze, if we augment those jobs with AI, what impact would it have on our workforce? And probably they will figure out that it's, not that much, maybe 20% less, 15% less, depends on the industry. And then adjust recruitment volumes to that. And the people that they do hire, invest in training and enrich the jobs. If you are augmenting with AI, make sure that the AI takes the boring parts of the job, but that nice, where there's interaction with people, real analysis, critical thinking still remains.
I love that as well, Marketa. Like, let's be clear about where the automation is directed. Like, we can't just say, oh, just throw it in there and see what happens. You can actually nudge it in the places where you want it nudged. And, even if it can, for instance, make a meeting more efficient, maybe you should think about intentional inefficiency occasionally, and to think actually it's more than just explicit exchange of information that's required. Maybe there's also we need to exchange implicit information. Maybe we need a trust relationship reinforcing there. That can't be driven by agendas or bullet points. Very good, Marketa. Okay, yes, Yaz, your final shout to you. Advice to young people today and companies hiring for those young people.
I think for young people, it's a pendulum swing, because for so many years, until recently, they were told, if you learn to code, your future is secure. And I think this is completely given the lie to that. There's a great apocryphal story that I used to tell a lot, which is that iBanking loves to hire art history majors, which is counterintuitive because it's not a very quantitative sounding field. But in art history, your final exams are, you see a painting and you need to know the century, the style, the artist, the country within a moment. The only way to know that is if you have an intersection of knowledge of geography, politics, culture, religion, law, whatever, sciences of those periods. And then your ability to apply that intersection of knowledge to pattern recognition, to critical thinking, becomes really significant. So I think for young people to re-examine maybe not just humanities as the focus, but more of a liberal arts education, which is more US style than say in other parts of the world, so that when you're in the workplace, you are able to ask better questions. You're able to interpret nuanced outputs. You're able to lead teams using AI as tools, using AI as a member of your team. So I think for young people, that would be my kind of advice. And maybe for employers, and I put a note about this in the chat as well, maybe the training and hiring criteria, and this sounds a little bit airy-fairy, can be about adopting an AI mindset, where the definition of that is a combination of your attitude and your knowledge, making you more iterative in your approach, conversational, open to change, adaptable. All those skills will then become potentially more important than actual deep expertise in a particular technology or in a particular function, because the tools are evolving so quickly. So that pairing of the curious, inquisitive, creative mind with a baseline of knowledge paired with the deep expertise that's going to come from the tools.
Yeah, really good. We're shifting sort of our lens with regards to what type of person we're looking for. It's fascinating where we're at, folks. Thank you so much for knocking some brain cells together with us. It's been great to have this dialogue. Folks, have you enjoyed this conversation? A little bit of a different track, but I think we need to kind of have more expansive conversations sometimes, and get away from the tactical how-tos, because we're all participants in society at whatever level of life trajectory we're in, and we've all got a stake. So I think the more conversations of this type we have, the better. But we've got to come off air at this point. We're well over time. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Marketa Simkova, thank you for joining and keeping with us. I know it's late over in the UAE. You have a very good weekend. Sophie, thank you so much for getting early and joining us from the US. I really appreciate your input. Great blog, by the way. Keep writing, keep in touch. And Yaz, thanks for joining as well. Great to see you. We'll catch up soon. Hopefully, it won't be too long before we get some FaceTime together, and we'll have another chit chat of this type. And James, thanks so much for coming in and holding on late, seeing us through to the end, really. So fantastic to see you. Hopefully, we'll catch up. We'll have a non-alcoholic beverage soon, mate.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Cool. What a great conversation, everybody. I really enjoyed that. I want to try and host more of these, open air, blue sky type stuff. I think it's really worth us diving into. Let us know if you're interested in more conversations of this type. Next week, we'll be back with a related show. It's actually about, again, the future, but it's about how do we measure the performance of talent acquisition in this AI-enabled world. Every single recruitment technology vendor is rolling out an AI agent to you today. So the expectation is your job is going to change. How do we measure actually what is a good recruiter when everyone is AI enabled? That is the topic of the conversation. Make sure you sign up for that event. It's already up on my Crowdcast page. You can follow my Crowdcast channel anyway. You can be notified when that happens. If you're watching this on LinkedIn, best way to do it is simply follow my LinkedIn page. That's my personal page, by the way. Just try and connect. You can't just follow it instead. And what will happen is that you'll be updated when I go live. Okay, that's about it. I hope you've enjoyed the show. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.